It is 2 in the afternoon on the hottest day of August. You are sitting in your living room with the air conditioner running, the blinds pulled, the ceiling fan on, and you are still sweating. The electric meter outside is spinning. Somewhere in an office building 4 states away, somebody is getting a little bit richer off every degree of heat your house cannot shake. Now, let me tell you about the back bedroom of the old home place where I grew up. No air conditioner, no ceiling fan, no electricity at all. And on the hottest afternoon of the hottest week of summer, you could walk in there from the blazing porch and feel the air change, cool and still and dim, the kind of cool a machine fights for and never quite wins, because the room was built to hold it, and the people who slept in it understood something about heat that most people have completely forgotten. My name is Elias Carter. I was raised in the hill country of Western North Carolina, where my family has farmed the same ridge for 6 generations. We have never owned an air conditioner, not one, not ever. Today, I'm going to show you what we do instead, the methods the old mountain families used to cool a room without electricity and without spending more than $7. I will tell you what is happening in your house right now that is making it harder to cool than it needs to be, and I will give you the fix, and I will tell you why none of this is new and why you were never told. Stay with me. Before I show you the methods, I want to make sure you understand what heat actually does inside a house, because once you see it clearly, the fixes make obvious sense and you will never look at a hot room the same way again. Heat does not just float in through the open door. It moves in several different ways at once, and each one of those ways has its own fix. The first way is radiant heat, which travels in straight lines from hot surfaces directly to cooler ones, the same way the sun warms your face on a cold winter day. Your roof gets hot, the wood under your shingles gets hot. That hot wood radiates heat straight down through the attic and into the ceiling of the room below, baking the room from above all day long. The second way is conducted heat, which moves through solid materials the way a cast iron pan conducts heat from the burner up through the handle. The walls of your house absorb heat from the outside air and conduct it slowly through to the inside, releasing it into your rooms hours after the hottest part of the day has passed. That is why a house is often hotter at 9 at night than it was at noon. The walls are still giving back what they absorbed all afternoon. The third way is convective heat, which is simply hot air moving into a space and displacing cooler air. The gap under the door, the poorly sealed window frame, the attic hatch that does not close tight, all of these let hot air in and push your cool air out. 3 kinds of heat, 3 different fixes. The old mountain builders addressed all 3 without ever taking a class in thermodynamics, because they built with their eyes open and paid attention to what worked. The first and most important thing the old Hollows people did to keep a room cool was to make sure the house breathed the way it was meant to. But today I want to take that further and show you what they did specifically for the rooms where people slept and worked, because the whole house breathing is one thing and the individual room is another. The old method for a sleeping room was the night flush. Here's how it works and why. During the day, the sun beats the house and the walls and the ceiling soak up heat the way a brick soaks up heat in a fireplace. By evening, the inside of your walls and ceiling have stored hours worth of heat, and they are slowly radiating it into the room. This is what makes a bedroom unbearable at 10 at night, even after the outside temperature has dropped. The air in the room has cooled, but the walls have not, and the walls are still cooking you. The fix is to flush the stored heat out of the room before you sleep in it, and the way you do that is with moving air at the right time. After the sun goes down and the outside temperature drops below the temperature inside your room, which in most of southern Appalachia happens reliably between 9 and 11 at night, even in the worst of summer, you open 2 windows, not all of them. 2, one on the side of the room that has been in shade all afternoon, which will be the north or east window depending on your house, and one on the opposite side. You want a cross breeze, air entering from the cool shaded side and moving across the room and out the other side. If you have an attic hatch, crack it 2 inches. The hot air that has been sitting up there all day will climb out through the gable vents and pull the cooler air through your bedroom behind it. You will feel it within 20 minutes. A soft movement of air across the floor, cool and slow, pulling the stored heat out of the walls and the ceiling and the furniture and replacing it with the cool night air that the hollow has been collecting all evening down in the creek bottom where the cold air drains. By midnight, the room has shed most of what it stored. By the time you go to bed, the walls are cool to the touch, and they will stay that way until mid-morning. That is the night flush. No electricity, no machinery, just two open windows and the physics of a mountain hollow doing what they have always done. My grandfather did this every night of every summer he ever lived and never once called it anything special. It was just how you managed the heat. It was just what you did. Now here is the $7 fix that makes the biggest single difference in how a room feels during the day. And it is the same one I touched on in the attic video, but I want to go deeper into it here because for a bedroom or a workroom, it is even more important. It is the cotton muslin on the ceiling. Your ceiling is the roof of your world as far as heat is concerned. All day long, the hot wood above it is radiating heat straight down at you, and the ceiling is soaking it in and radiating it right back down into the room. You can feel it if you hold your hand up toward the ceiling on a hot afternoon. That heat coming off it is real and it is relentless, and it does not care how well your walls are insulated. The fix is to break the radiant heat at the ceiling before it reaches you, and the material you use is the same plain unbleached cotton muslin I told you about for the attic ridge, available at any fabric store for about $1 a yard. Here is what you do. You take 4 yards of plain white unbleached cotton muslin and you tack it loosely across the ceiling of the room, an inch or two below the actual ceiling surface, using small finish nails or tacks around the perimeter. You are not stapling it flat against the ceiling. You are hanging it so it drapes slightly with a small AIR gap between the cloth and the ceiling above it. That air gap is important. Here is what happens. The hot ceiling radiates heat downward. The muslin, which is a breathable natural fiber that holds just a little moisture from the air, interrupts that radiant heat. The heat hits the cloth and most of it stops there. The small amount that makes it through has to cross the air gap before it reaches the room, and by then it has lost most of its energy. The room below the muslin stays several degrees cooler than it would without it. 4 yards covers a standard bedroom ceiling at $1 a yard. That is $4. Add $1 for the tax, and you are at $5. And you have dropped your room temperature by a meaningful amount with no electricity, no machinery, and nothing more complicated than a piece of cloth and a tack hammer. Do not use synthetic fabric. Do not use plastic sheeting or a tarp. The whole reason cotton works is that it is a natural, breathable fiber that interacts with the humidity in the air, taking a little moisture in during the cool night and releasing it slowly during the heat of the day, which adds a small but real evaporative cooling effect on top of the radiant heat interruption. Plastic does neither of those things and will trap heat instead of blocking it. Plain, untreated cotton only. Now let me show you the window trick that the old mountain women knew, and that costs nothing at all if you have any fabric in the house. On the hottest afternoons, the windows on the south and west sides of your house are letting in not just light, but direct radiant heat from the sun hitting the glass and radiating straight into the room. A closed blind helps, but a blind traps the heat between the glass and itself and radiates it back into the room anyway. What works better is a damp cotton cloth hung across the window opening on the inside, touching neither the glass nor the sill, just hanging free in the opening. When the outside breeze comes through that window, it has to pass through the damp cloth first. The water in the cloth evaporates into the moving air, and the air comes out the other side cooler than it went in. On a dry afternoon, which these mountains often give you even in the worst of summer, this drops the temperature of the incoming air by several degrees. On a heavy, humid day, the cooling is gentler, but the cloth still blocks the direct radiant heat from the glass and that alone makes a real difference to how the room feels. It is the same principle as the wet sheet in the doorway that the old timers used before there was anything else. You wet the cloth in the morning, hang it with 2 small nails or a tension rod, and re-wet it at midday when it has dried out. The cloth costs nothing if you cut it from an old bed sheet. The nails cost $1, the water costs nothing, and the room on the other side of it is cooler all afternoon. For rooms that face west, which catch the full force of the late afternoon sun when it is lowest and hottest and driving straight through the glass, the old mountain builders planted something on the west side of the house that most people have forgotten to think about. A deciduous vine, wisteria, Virginia creeper, climbing hydrangea, any fast-growing vine trained up a simple trellis of rough-cut lumber set a foot out from the west wall. In summer, when the leaves are full, the vine shades the wall completely, blocking the radiant heat before it ever reaches the siding. In winter, when the leaves have dropped, the full sun reaches the wall and helps warm the house. The vine does in summer exactly what you need and steps aside in winter exactly when you need it to. A cutting from a neighbor's wisteria costs nothing. A trellis of rough lumber costs $2 in materials, and that west wall, which has been baking your west-facing rooms all afternoon every summer, stays in shade from late morning through the worst of the heat. The old home place on this ridge has had climbing vines on the west wall for as long as anyone can remember. That wall is 10 degrees cooler to the touch on a hot afternoon than the south wall beside it that gets full sun. $2 in lumber and a cutting from a neighbor, and that wall never bakes you again. The vine grows back thicker every year and works harder every summer without you doing a single thing more than planting it. Now let me tell you about the summer kitchen principle, because it is one of the most powerful cooling tools the old mountain families had, and it translates directly to something you can do in your house today without building anything. The summer kitchen, which I have mentioned before, was a separate small building behind the main house where all the hot cooking was done in summer, so that the heat of the stove never entered the main living space. Most folks do not have a summer kitchen, but the principle behind it is something you can apply any evening with what you already have. Cooking puts an enormous amount of heat into a house. A single hour of oven use on a summer evening can raise the temperature of a small house by 4 or 5 degrees, and that heat sits in the walls and the ceiling and radiates back at you all night. The old mountain way of handling this in the absence of a summer kitchen was to cook in the early morning before the heat of the day built up, to cook outside over an open fire or a camp stove for the hot meals, and to eat cold or room temperature food in the evenings. Cornbread made at 6 in the morning, cold beans and greens at supper, a jar of milk kept in the spring house. Nobody went hungry, and nobody cooked heat into the house at the worst time of day. If you are not willing to give up your evening cooking, and I understand that, then at minimum open the kitchen window and the window on the opposite end of the house before you turn on the stove, and keep them open the whole time you are cooking. The rising heat from the stove creates a natural draft that pulls air through the house the same way my grandmother used to use the stove in the summer kitchen to ventilate the whole home place. You are using the heat you are generating to pull it out of the house rather than letting it sit. It is not a perfect solution, but it is the difference between a house that is 5 degrees hotter at bedtime because you cooked in it, and a house that shed most of that heat through the windows while you were doing it. That one habit, opening those 2 windows before the stove goes on, costs nothing and changes how the whole house feels by the time you are ready for bed. The last thing I want to show you is the activated charcoal cooling tray, which is something the old mountain people used in a slightly different form, and which costs about $7 to put together and runs on nothing but a breeze. You take a shallow tray, a baking pan, a wooden box lined with screen, anything that holds material and lets air move across it, You fill it with activated charcoal, the kind sold for aquarium filters at the pet store, in a layer about 2 inches deep. You wet it thoroughly, pour off the standing water, and set it right in the window where the breeze comes in, not in the middle of the room, right in the opening where every bit of air entering the room has to pass across it first. The damp charcoal works exactly the way the damp cloth does. The water evaporates into the moving air and the air comes out cooler on the other side, but the charcoal does something the cloth alone does not. It also cleans the air as it passes through, pulling out the damp and the stale and the close summer smell that settles into a room that has been shut up in the heat. It is the same material that goes into the expensive air cleaning machines that sell for $300 to $400. The same material doing the same job sitting in a tray in your window for $7. You re-wet it each morning. You set it in the sun once a month to refresh it. One bag of charcoal lasts you the whole summer. Now, I want to take a moment here because this is the part that matters, and it goes beyond the methods themselves. The average American household spends over $2,000 a year running air conditioning, $2,000 every year for the rest of the time you own your house, because the house was built without the knowledge that would have let it breathe on its own. The electricity companies make money on every degree your house cannot shed. The HVAC companies make money when your unit works itself to death fighting a house that was never designed to cooperate with the cooling. The insulation companies, the window companies, the duct companies. There is an entire industry that profits from your house being hot and your only solution being a machine that never stops running and never stops billing you. There is no version of that arrangement where any of them benefit from teaching you that a $4 strip of muslin and 2 open windows after dark solves most of it. So nobody does. The hardware store still sells the muslin. The fabric store still has it on the bolt for $1 a yard. It has been sitting there the whole time. You just were never told to look for it and never told what it could do. None of the methods I showed you today require a service contract. None of them need a filter replaced or a refrigerant recharged or a technician to come out in the worst week of summer and tell you the compressor is gone. Cotton, muslin, a damp cloth in a window, a climbing vine on the west wall, 2 open windows after dark, a tray of charcoal in the breeze. $7 and an afternoon, and the knowledge that the people who built these hollows lived cool and comfortable through summers as hot as any we see today without asking anyone's permission or paying anyone's bill. They knew things we are only just starting to remember. Tell me in the comments what you are going to try first. The night flush, the muslin ceiling, the damp cloth window, the charcoal tray. Tell me what county you are in and how hot your summers run. And if you try any of these this week, come back and tell me what happened. I read every single one, and the things you all share from your own places are the reason I keep doing this. For folks who want all of it, every method I have covered on this channel and the ones I have not gotten to yet, I have put it together in a book. You will find the link down in the description below. Next time I am going to show you the old mountain way of keeping every fly out of the kitchen and the smokehouse all summer long with nothing but a jar, a piece of brown paper, and one ingredient from your pantry that you would never guess. It worked for 100 years before sticky paper was invented, and it still works better than anything you can buy. It is the natural next step from today. Until then, open the windows after dark, hang your muslin, wet your cloth, and remember that the people who built these mountains with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.